Hello everyone, I'm DoodlesSkaboodles, and I made One Night at FIREY'S, a BFDI themed kind of horror game, FNAF parody, copy, whatever.
Hello.
Yeah, so at the time I'm recording this, I've made this game about 2 months ago now, and honestly I've been really surprised with how it actually took off. It wasn't exactly the most famous game ever, but it did really good, especially for my first ever game, and in a community that's kind of smaller than the FNAF community as a whole, so I didn't really think it would gain as much attention as it did, but yeah, the game actually performed really well, and I've been really happy with how it turned out, and I can't thank you guys more enough for the performance of this game. So in this video I'm going to talk about how I made it, how to play the game, and I'll also go over some things I would do better. At the time of making this, I think I've also announced my second game coming out that's a sequel to this game, and I think you guys will like it, so watch out for that. Truthfully told, this game doesn't really have much of an origin story. I always wanted to make a Five Nights at Freddy's parody, or parody, is that the right word? Fan game today, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, I always wanted to make a parody FNAF game, and I just never really knew what to do, but then I kind of got into BFDI and stuff, and then the idea just clicked to mix the two of them together to appeal to my audience and myself in a way. But then I ran into a roadblock. I don't know how to make a game, so first I had to look around. At first I tried Game Maker Studio, didn't really know how to do that, gave up. Then I found this no-code program called gdevelop, which would make it a lot easier to make my game, especially because it's 2D. It's mostly visual effects and sound effects, so I didn't really need to do a whole bunch of coding for real. I'm sure the vast majority of you don't know this, but there was actually a version of this game before the one that you're probably playing, which is, it was more of this actual FNAF 1 clone with 2 doors to the side, except there was going to be this twist where one character pops out of like a carpet in the floor. It was kind of dumb, so the idea kind of fell off from there, and then I picked it back up like a month later, and I started developing the real One Night at FIREY'S. When planning the game, you can tell I kind of took a lot of inspiration from different games. First of all, I wanted every character to do something different, like One Night at Flumpty's, which is one of my inspirations. So in the game, Firey comes through the vent, and you have to press a button to scare him off. So that was from One Night at Flumpty's 3. Who else? Leafy comes through the door. That's obviously Five Nights at Freddy's 1. Blocky is some sort of ultimate custom night, and then Flower is obviously the FNAF 2 mechanic. I can't say there's a whole lot of scrapped content, other than just some ideas I never really went through with, like the usage meter the usage meter in hindsight would have been a lot easier to tell, that the flashing of the vent actually uses power, which is a thing that confused a lot of people in their first playthrough. Yeah, that flashing it actually takes power, so, the only other real scrapped content from the game, or scrapped idea at least, is that Bubble was gonna be a character because I wanted it to be like the Final Four, but I literally didn't know how to make her scary in the slightest, and I even had that kind of problem with Blocky, but he's more of a menacing character in the show, so I thought it would make a lot more sense than a literal bubble attacking you. You may or may not see the whole One Night thing as a parody of One Night at Flumpty's, but the real reason why I did that is because I didn't believe I could get people interested in the game enough to play for 5 whole nights, although there is technically extensions of the game that are more optional to beat it. And I knew people's attention spans weren't even going to last that long, to be honest. So the one night thing is more of just a way for people to actually get the full experience without having to waste a bunch of time playing my game. Although the difficulty may or may not change that anyway. One thing I've never really seen anybody mention about One Night at FIREY'S is the rooms that all the characters stay in. They're all supposed to give off a certain, like, different vibe. I know that they're not the best illustrated, especially compared to some other games, but I thought they're all pretty neat to look at, pretty simple. So, for example, I think the room Flower stays in, I think that was intended to be some sort of, like, psychedelic kind of thing, but I didn't really know how to make that, so I just stuck with the skull and then made it more of a neon room. Cam 1, where Leafy and Firey can be found, that was meant to be like some sort of circus room, although I didn't really make it that way either, so I guess none of my ideas really went through there. I might as well take the time here to explain how the game works, because a lot of people were confused about that on release. I did not really expect that, In fact, I was trying to tone the game's mechanics down on purpose because I didn't think my audience would be able to understand it, but I guess it wasn't enough. For starters, Firey comes through the vent, and once he's off all the cameras, you're supposed to press the button to flash him, and it'll instantly go back to cam 1. Leafy will walk through the hallway and down to your door. Just like Firey, if she's off all the cameras, then you can check the light to see if she's there, although that's not really a necessary mechanic, and then you can close the door. Blocky will simply walk towards this lever in his room that will shut off the power and it'll instantly kill you. You're supposed to press the button that appears once he's at his last stage to make him go back. He also has some sound cues that he's operated by, so once he gets to his third laugh, that's when you know it's time to send him back. And then Flower is just a simple music box mechanic. You're supposed to hold the button on her camera in order to increase her happiness. Hold, let me repeat, not spam, because that was a big problem on release. A lot of people thought you were supposed to spam that button and then they would keep losing. And then somebody even ran into a glitch where that would create like duplicates of Flower jump scares, which I didn't even know was possible. For the most part, resource management isn't the biggest part of this game. I've definitely seen people die to power, but it's never really been that big of an issue. I think you can beat the 20 mode with like 20% power if you're lucky, so. On release, the game had some issues with frame rate and running on lower end devices where nights would basically end up being like twice or even maybe 3 times as long, even though they're only really intended to be 6 minutes long, so yeah, that's my bad on my part. That was just some optimization issues, but other than that, the game should be really short to get through on first try. A perfect run should only be about 20 minutes long, so. Speaking of which, I'll just go over when the characters activate. Firey will activate directly after the phone call made by the announcer. Leafy will activate at 1 AM, and it's actually kind of more likely to hit your door first than Firey is to make it through the vent. And then it's all linear from there. Blocky will activate at 2 AM, and then Flower activate at 3 AM, which should be operated by a sound cue, so. The inclusion of the Inferno Night is obviously a reference to the One Night at Flumpty's Hard Boiled mode, which is basically a harder version of the main game. I really wanted to make this game have a little bit more replayability based on a hard mode, but even then I didn't think that was enough, so eventually I developed the Custom Night, which is kind of notorious in my head because when I first made the Custom Night, it was actually impossible on the 20 mode. The Inferno Night was also very hard but beatable, but I don't think anyone on the first patch would be able to beat the game. So one thing I would do a lot better in the future is probably play testing based on that experience, because that made everyone's first playthroughs kind of unfair, and I'm sure that kind of spoiled the experience for a lot of people. But on the newest patch, I think pretty much all the problems with the game should be fixed. There's still like bugs like galore, because when I made this game I didn't really know how to playtest, obviously, so but for the most part it's really playable, so, and I don't think there's any more difficulty issues. In fact, I think after all that, I think I might have made the game too easy actually, but I don't really regret it now. My audience can actually play the game comfortably, so I think that's a plus. Another thing I wish I could do better with this game is the jump scares. FIREY'S is decent, and then I think Flower's is actually pretty good, but Leafy and Blocky are both just too quiet. They're kind of sudden, and then I think Blocky especially just looks kind of goofy. I knew when I was making this game that I wasn't going to be able to make BFDI characters all that scary. I mean, it's building blocks and leaves, so it's not really that easy to make an actual effective horror game with these characters. But one thing I would do in the future is probably try and make this game a little bit creepier. If I ever made a remastered version, I would make these atmospheres a lot darker and really set the tone for what's supposed to be a horror game, although I didn't really do the greatest job at that. In the past, I got a lot of questions about the quote-unquote story of this game, which I know is supposed to be like a staple of Five Nights at Freddy's and a lot of its fan games, but I didn't really think of that. I just really wanted to create a more fun experience instead of focusing on the story I could have developed, especially when BFDI already has one. So I can't say there's like a definitive story. Maybe there's some sort of story, but I wouldn't say there's any sort of lore like there is in a lot of Five Nights at Freddy's games and fan games. So I guess that's something to look out for, but it's never really going to be as big as a part of this game as it is other games. One thing that I really love about the reception of One Night at FIREY'S is all of the fan content I've seen on YouTube. Some of those things are really made well, and it's not even just on YouTube. I've seen like a couple edits and videos on TikTok. I've even seen a couple. I even saw that there was this one. There was this Reddit page for it. I don't know what those are called, but it was really cool. I'm really glad that a lot of people have taken a liking to this game that I kind of just made in like 2 months just to mess around with game development and represent two things I really liked. But I'm really glad that something I made can make people want to create more content based off of it. There are a plethora of playthroughs of this game. Not a lot get past the first night, but some do, and they're all really fun to watch. I've never really had more of an exciting time on the internet than there was while I was watching everyone try and play this game, figure it out. One of the first things that comes to mind is that one video that has like 160,000 views, and I think it's all the jump scares. The person who made that video and all the comments are really supportive of FIREY'S, and it really pushes me to want to make more FIREY'S games, and that's why I'm glad that I've kind of built a community off of this game, and it's kind of cool to know that there will be a group of people who are actually actively waiting for this new game to come out. So if we're talking in the future for One Night at FIREY'S, obviously the sequel will release sometime this year, probably in the earlier half, maybe in the next like 1 or 2 months if I'm really lucky with my time. And I really want to be able to make more games in general, not just like Five Nights at Freddy's clones and stuff, but I want to make more games for everyone because I think it's actually really fun. And I even kind of like it more than making an object show. Not to diss the whole idea, but I feel like the idea of making something more interactable is a lot cooler in my personal experience, and I really think if you haven't made a game before and you've thought about it in the past, then I think it's actually really worth it. You might not get as lucky as me because I kind of had a whole idea set out for me. It's a fan game, and I didn't even make it with quote-unquote real coding, but I think this game proves anyone can make a game. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in whatever I do next. So goodbye.